Well, Alec, welcome to the Beginning of Wisdom podcast, episode 1.
Thanks, Levi. It's a bit surreal, to be honest.
It's good. Yeah. Can't believe we're finally filming after so many months of planning and preparation, but I'm so keen.
Likewise.
Awesome. Well, I thought we'd begin with a little bit of a life story. Spend some time getting to know you, getting to know how you grew up. I suppose the value I think that we get out of life stories is that a lot of the things that we carry in our adulthood are products of the things that we've bought into as reality. And some of those things are really good. I think we get a lot of nurture. We get a lot of the goodness of God shown to us from people that God has brought along in our life. But then I think there's the things that we grow up with or without that shape our understanding of things for the worse as well. And so, yeah, just wanting to showcase that, I suppose, because like myself, you've had multiple opportunities, I think, to share your life story. And with that comes the preparation. And I'm sure you learned a lot about yourself through those experiences. But not everybody, I think, has even taken a closer look at their own life story to see how it's shaped them, let alone doing further exercises to see how maybe God's thread of mercy and his fingerprint on people's lives and their own story. So, yeah, I'd love to launch into it. If you would, I suppose, beginning with a little bit of where you're from, where you grew up, and just take it from there.
Yeah. Righto. So originally from Victoria, an hour east of Melbourne, in a wonderful place called Mount Evelyn. I currently live in Sydney at the moment. I've been living in Sydney for, I first left Victoria in 2017. So it's been close to 10 years since I've been outside of the family home. And I grew up with a wonderful family. So a wonderful mum, wonderful dad, Bronwyn and David. And I have an older sister who's 3 years older. And then I have a twin brother who is my best friend, absolutely love him. I think he's currently in Jerusalem at the moment.
Okay.
But so grew up in this town, Mount Evelyn. Both my parents came from Christian upbringings, and they did a lot, I think, to set us up well. In life, they very much wrestled the faith out for themselves. What does it mean to be Christian? What does it mean to follow God? And they took a lot of steps even before I was born to take their faith seriously. But I think it was definitely a journey for them. It wasn't without its struggles and all of that, and so.
Just quickly, what's their background in terms of their faith, and are they Australian, both Australian, or? Yeah,
both my parents are of Dutch heritage. So, I mean, my last name is Van Bockel, which is about as Dutch as you get.
Anything with a van in front.
Yes. So my grandparents, I think 3 out of the 4 grandparents are actually originally from the Netherlands. So,
okay.
But yes, all of the grandparents had Christian upbringing as well. So I have grown up with a Christian heritage, but I would say it may not have been the strongest Christian heritage. And so I definitely found myself growing up with the knowledge of Jesus, but it wasn't, I would say, necessarily very grounded. And so there's a lot my parents did to really nurture me and love me. Like there's so many great memories I have, let's say out in the backyard. My dad was a park ranger for a long time and then a fire operations officer. And so just these great memories of, having bonfires with dad, roasting chestnuts, driving around and locking up the park gates with him. So a lot of these great formative memories, but I think as time got on, particularly as I started to enter high school, particularly the world of emotional maturity, spiritual maturity, this space as a kid becoming a teenager, there's a lot of questions I started to wrestle with, a lot of influence from fellow students at school, and pastorally, I think my parents struggled a bit in that space. Not to say I was a very easy child. I was a bit of a handful as well. And so particularly as I entered this space of high school, I think I was a little shaky with my identity, who I was. I started to exhibit a few, symptoms of anxiety. It was also in that time, I started going to youth group at a few churches, which was a lot of fun. There was a lot of fun we had there, but there was this deep part of my heart that I withheld in particularly those high school years, and didn't really let anyone close to it. And the few times I did sort of bring this questioning, like, who am I? Like, what is real? These sort of questions, they weren't necessarily handled very well. And so I learned pretty quickly to just withhold myself. And I think particularly a bit of a struggle at that time was my twin brother. One of the really hard things of, like, being a twin is a great blessing, don't get me wrong. In especially the past 7 or 8 years, it has formed to be one of the closest friendships I have. But I think particularly in the formative years, it was really hard to not compare myself with Kyle. Yes. And so a lot of my childhood was seeing where I was in relation with my brother. Did my parents love him more than me or less? And my brother, at least in my experience, was a lot more steady than me. He was introverted, good grades. I was a little bit more conscientious, unconscientious. I was a little bit all over the place. I found that too. Just this comparison really started to develop, that everyone was better than me. And so I think coming to year 11, I'd burnt a lot of the trust bridges between my parents and I. I didn't really have much of a foundation. And so, I think at year 11, the age of 17, I was starting to exhibit a lot of anxiety. And
what would that kind of look like? Did it come out at school a lot or around your home? How did it affect your relationship with your parents?
Yeah, totally. How did that anxiety look like? One of the, major symptoms that I had, particularly towards the back end of year 11, was my hand would shake a lot. I couldn't sort of keep steady. I found it very hard to go to sleep, so I would use my phone and literally just stay on my phone till I was exhausted. I spent a lot of time, I struggled to feel things as the anxiety increased. And so I loved film music. And so I'd use film music to feel, to at least feel something, because there was a lot of numbing going on. And so I kept having to go to more extreme soundtracks or extreme moments in cinema that elicited or brought that emotion.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't exactly anxiety, but I was quite volatile with my parents in that time as well. Like, I think there was a level of, I didn't think they loved me or could reach me. And so I was constantly trying to push them. Would get into verbal fights, verbal arguments, and I would constantly be trying to push them to see when they would step in, to see when they would intervene. And a lot of the time I didn't treat my parents very respectfully. And
what do you think was driving that? If you were to look at some of the key things that was driving your anxiety, driving that narrative that you were maybe neglected a little more than your twin brother, or that need that you felt to kind of push your parents and see what they offered you in return. Like, where do you think some of that might have been coming from? Where do you think it might have began?
I think just as I pondered it right now, there was a deep need in me, though I wouldn't have been able to name it at the time, for stability. I really needed order and something that was beyond myself that wouldn't budge. My parents, one thing I love about them was they encouraged creativity. But I was a very manipulative kid, and I found if I'd push my parents, the lines would budge. Right. And if the lines could budge, then I could control it. And I think particularly there were moments in my childhood where I was like, oh, this is awesome. I can get what I want, when I want, how I want. Though I think, it was probably a bit subconscious. But reflecting back on it now, I see there was a bit of that. Mm-hmm. But I guess the real downside of that as well is, particularly because I didn't have a steady relationship with God, my parents were the primary stability for me. Yeah. And if I could manipulate, if I could push, if I could shove, and if I could have my way, there's actually something deeply unsettling about that. When, like, deep down you realize, I've got no idea how life works. I've got no idea what's good. My life's falling apart. Yeah. And if the people that I go to for security, I can really push and they budge.
Yeah.
That is a sort of terrifying place. Like, on one level, it was self-imposed. I did a lot to contribute to that unhealth. But I think just reflecting back on it, there was that real lack of something solid. Yeah. Something that would push back. If I gave everything I had, it would meet me and say,
it would draw a line somewhere.
Yes. Yeah,
because I suppose what you were doing was in controlling where the lines were, in controlling the feedback you got, you became the center of your universe. But at the same time, if there's this growing anxiety and this growing distrust of yourself, then you don't want to be the ultimate person in control, because you're not trusting yourself in that. So who's looking after you? Who's nurturing you?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
So when you were 17, this was all sort of starting to really boil over.
Yeah. So I ended up like nearly every word I said was a lie to my parents, and I went behind their back and tried to, manipulate them into getting me to move to a new school, just so I could follow this girl that I was in a bit of a codependent relationship in. And I actually remember there was this moment where I just got off the phone with this girl. It was like at night. I was outside on the road. It was, drizzling. I was meant to be in youth group at the time, but I was out on this road. And I remember hanging up and just this deep sense of almost despair, I think, because I could tell things were real. The girl was really starting to push away from me or pull away from me. And she was the one that I was really starting to latch onto for my stability. And of course, she couldn't feel that. And so after that phone call, I just remember, like, under this street lamp, actually just crying out to God and saying like, God, can you please help me? And it was a genuine cry from my heart, although I think in my mind I was like, God, help me get back in control.
Yeah.
But it was this deep cry because this was in the last month of year 11, transitioning into year 12. After I prayed that prayer, within a month, all the lies and manipulation, the way I'd tried to keep my parents not in the light about my true motives for moving the school, it all came into light. And it was it was a brutal but beautiful time in retrospect.
How did you feel about it at the time, though?
At the time, it just felt like my world was falling apart. Okay. I think so. This moment of all these conversations that were outside of my control. Like I think if I were to use the analogy, I felt like my life was I was playing chess, but I was controlling both sides of the board. I was trying to remember what I said to who, all of this, trying to manage all the relationships. And after that prayer, within a few days, there were a few people that were part of my social circle.
Yeah.
That I tried to keep apart, that randomly touched base, had conversations, and were like, hang on, the story Alec's saying is completely different. Okay. And that, I think, really, it was this sense of my world was falling apart. And so at the time it was terrible. It ended up culminating in my parents choosing to pull me out of school. 3 days into year 12 orientation, they pulled me out and said along the lines of like, Alec, we love you so much that we aren't gonna watch you throw your life away. Okay. So like we don't think year 12 will be the best thing for you. And so they not proposed, they very much said, this is what we're doing, but it was invitational. They said, Alec, we're pulling you out of school and you need to find a Christian course. We'll pay for it. So they said, we'll pay for it and we'll drive you there, but it also has to be outside of the state of Victoria. And, you know, upon further conversation, I realized that they realized that if I stayed in the community that I was currently in, it wasn't necessarily going to be the healthiest space. So they were like, okay, Alec really needs a reset. And I wasn't 18 at the time. Yeah. And so almost that like spiritual covering or covering of, you know, the parents was very much still there.
Okay.
And so they made a great call. It was a risky call, but a very good one.
So how did you feel about that in the moment when they were saying, essentially, we want you out of the state, off to a Christian camp or a Christian school of some sort? But yeah. How did the 17-year-old Alec take that?
Yeah, it was a very, very interesting time. That it sort of happened over the space of about, I think it was 3 weeks, where they started to cotton on to everything that was happening. They ended up pulling me out of school. But I remember just before they pulled me out of school, they sat me down and said, Alec, don't go to school today. And I'm like, oh, why? And they're like, oh, we're pulling you out of school. And at that point, I still thought I could manipulate them to do what I wanted. And so I'm like, no, like, I'll be better. I'll do whatever you want. Like, just like, I was desperately trying to control them, but their resolve was very firm. And so it was simultaneously this terrifying thing where they wouldn't budge. I couldn't control them, and that was terrifying. But there was also, I feel like, a little part of me that it's almost like this had been the cry of my heart for ages of like, I want someone to be firm and to stand for me. And so this decision, I think on one part felt terrible, but it also allowed me to fall apart, I think. Yeah. I remember they drove me to the principal's office and, you know, pleading with them. And my dad just turns around and says, hey, Alec, we have made this decision. This is what's going on and this is why we've decided it. And we're not changing our mind. And I remember we went in, had the meeting with the principal. They drove me home, and just as the car parked, I opened the door, run down to the bush at the back of our house and just burst into tears. But although they were very scared tears, I think they were also the tears of I'm not in control and someone has made a firm decision for the better that I couldn't make.
Yeah. Okay. So moving forward, where did you end up going? Where did they send you? Did you have any kind of choice in where you went?
Yeah, I had a lot of choice into where I could go. I think, as a 17-year-old, probably the main things I was thinking about is what is going to involve the least amount of effort and least amount of work, what looks like the most fun. Yep. And yeah, like that I think was the main one. And so I had to look around. A few different people that I looked up to in my life recommended a few courses, but the two ones I landed on was there was a course up in the Gold Coast, which was 3 days a week of like sort of Bible study, all of that, and then 4 days off. And I was like, great, 4 days off to surf, to like have fun. It's only 3 days, but there was this other course down in Sydney where you just helped, like you studied and helped work at a conference center. And it was 5 days on, like you lived on base. And I looked at that and it just looks like death to me. I was like, you live on base for 5 days? Like this sounds terrible. And so,
how did you hear about this one in Sydney?
Yeah, so this one in Sydney, I had a family mentor. I known her since 2009. She recommended it, and to be honest, the only reason I applied was because I was so terrified of her that I was like, I'll apply for it just to please her, so I can say, hey, I've applied for it, and so I applied for this one in Sydney and for the one in Gold Coast, and in the coming weeks as the application process progressed, I got accepted into the one in Sydney. Yep. And I was still waiting for the one in Gold Coast, hadn't heard anything from them, and so I made the executive call. I'm just going to tell the place in Sydney, look, I'm not coming. And so I said that, only to a week later get a call from Gold Coast saying, hey, we've prayed about it and we just don't think this is the year that you're meant to be with us. And so by that point, there was only about a week or two remaining before I had to be out of the state. And so I rang back up Sydney and I was like, hey, will you let me back in? And they did. And I really think in retrospect, that was the hand of God. I needed that space. And I mean, we'll go into that a little bit later, but that was how that, I guess that unfolded.
Wow. So you called them up, you said, I'm actually coming after all.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's LL Ministries in Sydney, right?
Yes, that's the one.
Wow. And so how much did your parents know about this place? Because they were about to drive you up there. Had they had any previous experience, or had they attended any of the courses that LL runs?
Yeah. So my mum had actually been to, I think, 2 courses before, and she knew about it. She was wise enough to not recommend it to me, because I think if she'd recommended LL, I would have said no. Glad the family friend recommended it. But yeah, so they had a bit of an idea of what LL was, which was really, really great. But what was really cool as well was my whole family actually drove me up. So not only mum and dad, but my sister and brother said, hey, we're coming up too to support.
Yeah.
And so it was just such a surreal experience, because I think over that month and a bit long period between getting pulled out of school and having to make this decision, maybe to give just a little bit more back context, particularly year 7 to about year 11, it was just this increased trying to control my life, trying to manipulate, filled with anxiety, filled with fear, and just I was starting to fall apart in one sense. It was getting too much for me.
Yeah.
And so when all of this came about and they were pulling me out, it was almost like all the pent up, like just the fight in me, I had no energy left. And so I remember coming up to LL with like no energy. Yeah. Like it was this surreal experience of like, there was no way I could manipulate my way out of this. Like, and so it was like almost this resigned, well, here we go. Like, wow. This is life. This is where I'm going. This is where I am. I had no idea where I was going. I had no idea what LL was, to be honest. So it was a complete shot in the dark.
So what was your, like, as you're leaving the family, what kind of condition would you say the relationship with your sister and your brother, what was that like? I suppose because this course was a year long, right? How did you feel about leaving them behind, or even them dropping you off?
Yeah. I think on one hand, there was a level of preoccupation to me, of that like self-absorbedness. So like I couldn't really think about anything if it didn't have reference to me. So I was probably lacking a little bit of empathy there. But I had a close relationship with my sister. And thank God still do have a very close relationship with my sister. But to be honest, I wasn't too much thinking about my sister there. My brother and I, we'd sort of distanced from each other over the past few years, particularly as I was becoming more and more anxious, more and more just ungrounded. My brother, I think, distanced himself a little bit away from me as well. And so there was a bit of a disconnect there. So it wasn't this sort of deep, like, oh no, we're going to be in the different states. And I mean, to be honest, one of the really, really helpful things about being in a different state, and we'll probably go into this in a little while, is I didn't realize that every point of my life growing up, at least it felt like every point of my life growing up, I always did with Kyle. So we shared the same room growing up. We were in the same class, all but 1 year. We went to a small school. And so, about generally a classroom of, or a year level of about in between 20 and 30 students. And so we, shared a room in the same classroom, in the same soccer team, were part of the same youth groups, had the same friends. And so everything that I did, it felt like, was in reference to Kyle.
Yeah.
And so I was known as, Kyle's brother, or like, the twin, or like all of that. And so...
Was he ever known as your twin as well? Or did you feel like he had a little bit of the light shining on him and you were the offsider?
You'll have to get him on the podcast for that one. Yeah, not sure.
Okay.
Not sure, but... yeah, when I came up to LL, something which I didn't realize, which was a real bonus, was people didn't know me as a twin coming up.
Okay.
Like, people didn't get my name confused with Kyle. I was mostly either Alec or Alex, which my name's Alec. But,
but they still got the X and the C mixed up.
Yeah, and so there was a real actual positive of moving away from my brother, which I didn't realize, but my heart needed. My heart needed that sort of individualization from Kyle, of not feeling like half of a whole, of actually going, no, hang on, I am Alec. Full stop.
Cool. Wow. So tell me, what was it like? What were some of the earlier memories of arriving at LL Ministries in Sydney?
Yeah. So
can you tell us actually just a little bit about the ministry in terms of what it does, what it offers?
Yeah. So LL Ministries, it's ELLEL. It originates in England. That's where it was founded. I think it was the 1970s, by a guy by the name of Peter Horriban. And it was basically, it's a discipleship place, like really wanting to equip the body of Christ through inner healing, discipleship, welcoming, and LL gets its name from the town it's based in, which is called LL, which originated from its original name, which was All Hail. And
Okay.
so
So the actual name LL doesn't mean much more than
yeah.
the place that the ministry started. Yeah.
Yes. And so since I think the 1970s, it became a worldwide ministry. And so there's a center here in Sydney, run courses throughout the year that just, I'd say, dig a little bit deeper into, what is this Christianity all about? Like, what do we mean when we talk about anger? What do we mean when we talk about forgiveness? Yeah. Like, well, what does actually the walk of sanctification look like? And within that, there is sort of a branch of the discipleship for the young adults in between 18 to 25 called, when I did it, it was called the Year of Discipleship and Training. Since then, it's now called Undivided. And yeah, so I think coming into LL, it was, okay, I'm going to study an undergraduate. No, it was a Cert 4 in Christian Ministry and Theology, which I did not want to do. And also...
Why was that?
I hated study. We'll go into that maybe a little later. Yeah, it was... to be honest, I didn't want to necessarily be there. Like, I knew I couldn't be in Melbourne. No other place had accepted me, so here I was. I was at LL, and to be honest, I didn't think that, like, I didn't really see much wrong with my life. I was like, I'm not that bad. I'm pretty much just like Jesus, except maybe with, like, maybe a few, like, generational wounds or something, like,
Yeah.
And so I would say coming into LL, it was like this, I don't know why I'm here. Like, I don't really need this, but I'm just going to make the best of it. The good thing is I'd had all the fight knocked out of me coming into LL. So I would say I was a lot more, not settled, but wasn't trying to just manipulate everyone and everything.
Yeah.
But I was incredibly anxious, had no idea about it. And so I think the first couple of weeks to months of coming into LL, I was like, yeah, this is cool. Spending time with people. Yeah, this is great. But I mean, like, I'm not.
Got nothing really to gain from this space.
Yeah. Like, I guess this is just a year. Like, gonna miss out on everyone's 18th birthdays down in Victoria. But you know what? We'll get through it, and then I'll be able to come back down to Melbourne and keep living my life. I think that's probably what I was thinking.
Okay, so it was like, spend a year here, do what I have to do. So how many other students were with you in your cohort?
I was in a cohort of 6.
Okay, so that's quite small compared to a lot of the other Christian discipleship things out there, like YWAM or
very
Hillsong College, things like that.
Mm.
Yeah, so is that something you knew about, or were you a little bit shocked when you come and you're one of 6?
I had no idea. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't really have any expectations. Like, again, it wasn't me coming into this. It wasn't me coming into this year going, oh my goodness, I'm so excited for it. I'm so excited to what it's going to be like. I was like, this is the only place I can be at right now. Yeah. And so here I am. Yeah. So I guess I didn't really think about that.
Okay. Yeah, so tell me what it was like. What sort of things were you being taught? What sort of activities did they do? How did they disciple?
Yeah, so maybe just a bit of the structure of the year. Half of it was studying a certificate in Christian ministry and theology. So there was study aspect, which... again, I just didn't like study. I think just the whole discipline of it. Like, I just liked winging it. I just liked, whatever I felt like I would do. And study's not very conducive with that, because whether you want to do it or not, it's there.
You've got deadlines. You've got criteria.
And so yeah, you had the study point, and then you had also just helping run the house. So helping clean the house, working in the kitchen, cleaning the accommodation for the people that would come on the weekends. And yeah, then just a lot of fun activities as well. You get to went on a few different camps with the students, a few team building activities, and then just like a lot of different classes on life skills, like, you know, relationship, conflict resolution, all of that stuff. But I think probably maybe one of the most helpful things was there was a lot of emphasis put on God is a God who is alive and present and interactive. Like, God speaks today. God actually wants to have an interactive conversational relationship with you. And so there were quite a few classes throughout the year and courses as well in the year that were almost, well, unpacking teaching on the heart of God, but also then providing tools of, well, how do you get to know God? How do you develop a relationship with God that's interactive? And that, I think, sort of blew my mind, because I think before then I went to a lot of youth camps where it was like, yes, God is alive, God is present, but it was more, you meet him in a worship set, you know, waiting for the feeling of, like, you know, his presence on your hands or something. And it was like, how can I, in one sense, you know, what can I do to manipulate God to give me that warm, fuzzy feeling?
Yeah.
Like, I think that was very much, I think in my head, God existed to give me warm, fuzzy feelings. And so suddenly opening up this interactive relationship with God, like God speaks through also like thoughts, like, blew my mind. God speaks through the scripture. Like, that just blew my mind. And I think that opened up my relationship with God in such a way that God wasn't just saying, let's say, I love you, but he was also like, Alec, I see you. I see this moment in your life, and will you invite me into that space? And yeah, I feel like I'm now going a little bit off track, but
because one of the things that LL Ministries does at the core of their ministry is doing prayer ministry.
yeah,
And so, describe what it was like to participate, because not only do they allow you to receive prayer ministry appointments where you've got two ministers praying with you, but they train you up in that too. Hey,
yeah. So this whole not just concept, but this practice of prayer ministry, it is very much providing a space for you to encounter God in a way that perhaps your heart needs, and almost leaning in the faith of others as well. Like, and so, yeah, my year definitely involved the development of prayer ministry, but I think I was first introduced to it when I did a healing retreat in April.
okay,
Like, I'd heard a little bit about it before, but this healing retreat, which was over 2 days, or like one evening and then a full day, where you got to be with two prayer ministers just praying through stuff. And so maybe just to use, maybe this language would be helpful, like, you know, growing up in life, you almost make a mental map of what life is, you know, what certain things mean, like the word father, for example, in my mind meant a certain thing, just like love, or, you know, forgiveness, all of these things. I'd sort of built a map in my mind of,
because these are all common Christian concepts, but it doesn't mean everybody pictures the same thing when they're mentioned or talked about.
Yes. And so for me, definitely with God, it was like, God is God, but he doesn't really have any power. Like, that was something that though I didn't profess that, I acted that way.
Someone that you could push the boundaries with, and the boundaries might move.
100%. I could push the boundaries with, and at the end of the day, he wouldn't be strong enough to save me. And so it was very interesting in the first ministry session. Like, I still chuckle at this. the lead prayer minister that I had that was leading me through this ministry, they would not budge when I tried to lie, when I tried to manipulate, when I tried to lean into pride and how good I was. They'd just see right through it and say, that's not true. You're terrified. And I mean, it was a pretty uncomfortable place for me to be in, but it was exactly what I needed, because they saw through almost the mask that I was trying to present. That's, I'm all good. I don't need any help. I've got this under control. And so through the first prayer ministry session, it very much led to this crunch point where it's, would I keep hiding behind this mask that I've got it all together, or would I perhaps acknowledge that maybe I was more scared than I was, allowing myself to think. And even as I, in the ministry session, began to face that, I could feel this well of emotion of if I say I'm not okay, I feel like I'm just going to open the floodgates and I'm just going to fall apart. And I don't know where that's going to end. Better to remain in control, better to remain, that happy, see me, love me, I'm fine, I don't need help. Better to remain that than open this unknown floodgate within me and face stuff that I don't even know. I haven't faced it my whole life.
Yeah. And so did it get to that point within that day of ministry that you were receiving?
Yeah, it's a little foggy, I think. I do remember towards the end of the ministry session, I was definitely in tears. Yeah. And I think when I look back at it now, I realize that moment, something within me broke, and I realized, I think I need help. I think that was the moment where I was, perhaps I don't have it all together. Yeah. Perhaps I'm not as put together as I thought I was. I think that was very much the beginning. I don't think I would have been able to handle much more than that.
Sure. So, what did you think of the people who ran the ministry center? Were they similar to your average church leaders and pastors and your everyday folk, or did they kind of feel different? Did they have answers to things that maybe nobody else had kind of answered for your heart at the time? What was your read on the environment that you were in?
Again, thinking back to when I first came in, I avoided them like the plague. They terrified me. I think I was.
Why do you think that was?
I think I was just scared of authority, and when they looked at me, it just felt like they saw right through me. It was like all the elaborate masks and all the elaborate, protection that I'd put myself around myself. They just saw right through it, and I'm like, freaked out. And I'd put all those barriers there and self-protection measures for good reason, because I didn't think people would want to see this. And so I think that was probably the first thing about the leaders that I just avoided them like the plague. Yeah. But I think I'll share another story just in the ongoing, process of the first year, which does involve a bit of the leadership, just to show maybe a bit of the way they engaged with my heart. Yeah. So probably about halfway through the first year, I was really, I think, starting to get thirsty. And I would say the word I would use is hope. Yeah. There was a growing hope within me as I lived and worked in this ministry center, as I saw people receiving healing, as I saw people becoming free, as I watched the leaders loving God, there was this hope of perhaps life does not have to be this way, the way that I'm living it, trying to do it in my own strength alone, trying to hide. And all of this, it feels like it feels like I didn't willfully choose this, but by just being in the environment, I think my barriers were starting to go down. There was something subconscious in me that was like, this is safe, Alec.
Mm-hmm.
This is safe to let down the walls.
Yeah.
And is this really interesting thing of, I'm trying to resist this, but it almost just feels like my heart is just starting to melt and starting to become more receptive. And so there was this moment in August. So I'd come in January 2017. This is August 2017. There was this, I think it was maybe September, but there was this course called, I've forgotten what it was called back in my year, but it's Overcoming Fear and Anxiety. Yeah. And I mean, that was a big topic for me.
Yeah, for sure.
And a part of the course, they had these, someone would be up front just praying for all of us that were attending, and basically just inviting Jesus to bring his freedom and his life. And as they were praying, everything they were saying, I'm like, that sounds like me. Like that sounds like the hole that I've found myself and I've got no idea how to get out.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I was thinking of this at the time. There's this core memory that I have. I think when I was when was it? When I was learning to ride, so maybe I'd maybe 4 or 5 years old or something. And
like ride a bike.
Yeah, learning to ride a bike. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I remember my brother was learning to ride faster than I was, and there was this moment where my brother learnt how to ride without Dad holding onto him. And I just remember we're at our holiday house and Kyle's just riding down the road and my dad's running after him, celebrating. And I'm just sitting there on my bike, not knowing how to ride, watching my dad, who clearly loved my brother more than me, run away with the brother he really loves. And I'm just there on my own again. Yeah. And like, again, a logical thing, you can say, like, as dad, what do you do in that space? But for a young kid, it's just like, that's the narrative I chose. Yeah. And so while this prayer ministry was going on, this memory just came up to mind. And it almost just felt like everything they were praying for, I'm like, I want that freedom. I want to be free from fear, but I just feel stuck here. Like, it feels like the people that I want to save me just run off with the people that they love.
Yeah. So that memory almost was the epitome of so many other things you felt in all these other circumstances.
Yeah. And I remember just tears are starting to come in my eyes. I'm like, God, like, I need you to show up. Oh, God, I need you to show up. And it was like, almost like if God was in front of me, I would have had him by the collar, being like, God, come through for me. And finally, people to my left, to my right, they're just bursting into tears as God is just encountering them. And it's just awesome, and nothing's happening here. And I just remember this one point where I was like, God, I give up. Wow. There's this one point where I just gave up control. It felt like a very grace-filled moment. And as soon as I said I give up, I just felt this hand on my shoulder. Yeah. And I just burst into tears. It felt like the Father's hand on my shoulder. And
was it someone's hand?
Yeah, it was actually the leader of LL Ministries.
So Paul Ryan.
Yeah, Paul Ryan. Yeah. And so he put his hand on my shoulder, and I'm in tears, just blubbering mess.
Yeah. And
he ended up coming alongside me and just inviting me into an interactive conversation with God. And so you just ask the questions where's God? And I very much just felt God's presence show up in that memory.
Wow.
About 10 meters away from me, if my dad and brother were riding off this way down the road, God appeared here. And it felt, I heard him say, Alec, do you want me to teach you how to ride? And I'm just a blubbering mess right now, because this feeling of inadequacy, this feeling of insecurity, as I said, I didn't feel like I had a secure base.
Yeah.
God's right here. And so in the memory, it was almost this transformative healing moment where God said, do you want me to teach you how to write? I'm like, yes. Or like more like, yes, just in tears.
Yeah.
And so in the memory, just like with my imagination, I just found myself starting to try to ride with God in the opposite direction down the road. Yeah. And as I'm trying to do that, God just sort of stops me and he's like, because I'm making a mess of this whole writing thing. It's like, Alec, although you're riding in a different direction, you're still trying to ride faster than your brother. You're still trying to be better than him. And he's like, he just stopped me and looked me in the eye and said, like, Alec, you're not even ready to ride yet. Let me teach you how to walk. And it was this, I think, profound moment in my journey where it was like, Alec, your journey does not need to be one of constantly trying to be better than your brother.
Wow.
Like, your journey is actually one of learning to walk with God. And so I would say that moment, one, just shows a bit of the power of prayer ministry, also a bit of the, like, to have a space that can love you, or a community that can love you and be present with you and it takes about 7, 8, 9 months to reach that holy moment. Yeah. Like, I think I look back in retrospect, I'm like, just the love, the patience, the kindness to persistently love and trust God that in time those kind of spaces will be facilitated was incredible. And also I think just to the leadership, having people in leadership that are willing to meet you in the messy places, I think was that was quite profound, I think, for me. Yeah.
Wow. So this was August or September of your year into discipleship.
Yeah.
Where to from there? Did it start to did your interest in discipleship with God start to grow a little from experiences like that?
To use a very crude analogy, I think that experience was like a man dying from thirst in a desert, having a drop of water, and almost in a crazed manner going, what is this? I need more.
Yeah.
And just flailing and running about to try and find that. That's probably how I would liken it to. I had this experience it was profound. Like, I would say before when I shared in the high school years, when I would go to these, Christian camps, I was looking for a feeling, but there wasn't necessarily fundamental transformation. I was looking to be moved. I didn't want to choose to change.
You wanted something on the outside.
Yeah. I wanted God to do all the moving rather than me positioning, like choosing. Yeah. And so that moment very much with the whole writing and God meeting, that very much changed a level of my thoughts of, hang on, God wants to spend time with me. God created me, and though I am a twin, I'm unique. And actually, God knows that I can't do a lot of these things that I want other people to think that I can do, but He's willing to meet me where I am. I think that's probably one of the most profound things. I have a God that loves me enough to meet me where I am, which, to be honest, was in quite a pathetic state.
Yeah.
And so, back end of that first year, it awakened almost a bit of a wild thirst for that. I'm like, I don't know what it is. I don't know really, but I just want it. That was real. That was like, I am changed for that. And so within a month of that, I hadn't actually been baptized before. And so there was this deep desire within me of, I want to get baptized. I want to I want to place the stake in the ground to say, no. I am choosing to be Christian. I'm not just going to remain in this place of kind of wistfully hoping that God, might do something good. It's like, no. I am in for better and for worse. I am choosing Christ. And so, I talked to Paul about wanting to get baptized, and he gave me some of the most interesting responses. Like, are you sure you want to get baptized? I'm like, you meant to say yes. Like, this is meant to be the most exciting thing ever. It's like,
you're supposed to be convincing me.
Yeah. And he said, like, do you realize what you're going to be doing? You're going to be marking yourself for all eternity to say, I am Christ's.
Wow.
He's like, do you feel the weight of that? And I'm like, yes. And so he actually let me sit with that decision for a little while.
Yeah.
And I
was going to say, because I was around when you got baptized.
Yeah. So from the moment
I came along a year after you did.
Yeah, from the moment I pondered getting baptized to when it happened, I think it was 4 or 5 months later.
Wow.
But I think the beauty of that is it really, instead of it just being an impulsive, let's just send it, I had some months to go, if I say yes, this is probably going to change the whole trajectory of my life. And I mean, at the time I was like, yeah, but it's going to be awesome. It's going to be crazy. It's going to it's going to be beautiful. Let's
put the afterburners on.
Yeah, right. And so very much the back end of my first year, or that year of discipleship and training at LL, I would say I ended it being incredibly thirsty, incredibly filled with hope and wanting more. Not quite understanding what I wanted, but knowing that it was real and going, I gotta continue on. And what's really amazing is that the LL Ministries offered a second year, which I continued on in a diploma of ministry. And I hated the sound of that. I mean, I'd only done the certificate for because I had to be.
Yeah. But you did do it.
Yeah, well, like I wanted to volunteer and not study, but someone ended up sponsoring me to do the next year. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm being sponsored, I guess.
Because your parents had only signed you up for 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was sponsored for the second year.
What did they think, by the way, when you decided you wanted to do another year? Because they'd obviously sent you off for 1. I don't know if they were thinking, let's hope he stays for 2.
I think they'd seen a real change in me, and they were like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah,
like this is awesome. So
yeah, cool.
They were right on board with that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I went home for a month and then came back for the second year, and it was great. Jumped into the diploma. It was quite interesting. And I think this will very much maybe transition into some of the threads that I'm really starting to journey with today. But some of the threads have really birthed in particularly this second year, because I'd had this experience with God, but and I'm speaking very retrospectively here, like as I reflect upon it. A lot of my way of coping was preoccupation, self-centeredness. Everything revolved around me. And though I'd had this encounter with God, I think I was still very self-centered, self-focused. It wasn't necessarily malicious. It wasn't necessarily like, it was more a self-protection mechanism, but regardless.
Almost like infants are very self-centered.
Yes.
But it's almost a sense of them being so naive to everything else going on around them.
Yes.
That they are that self-centered.
Yes. And I would say there was definitely a lot of that, but not all. There was also this pride that I think begun to sneak in of like, oh, I can be God's loved one. I can like be the Christian poster boy, and so I think this second year was very much, it was a beautiful year. Absolutely loved it. There were incredible moments with God. But maybe just an overarching theme that I will draw out is I realized a lot of that year, there was still not a lot of trust in God. There was a growing trust in God, but I was very much like, God, you need to fix all my problems because I need to feel safe. And it was this, I need to be flawless. It was almost like using God so I could become whole and protected and complete, so that I didn't need God anymore. I was almost trying to use God as a means for my healing.
Yeah, because LL Ministries, a huge part of it is it's a healing ministry, right? I know that I fell into the trap of going, well, I just need to be fixed right up,
Yeah.
get all the prayer ministry and all the teaching that I need to correct all the things that I believe
Yeah.
that have messed me up. And once I'm there, I'll be Mr. Elite, and yeah, the world's my oyster from there. But there was this real striving to go, like, I just need to be whole again. I recognize I'm broken, but like I can't wait for the day where I'm healed, kind of thing. And there was this like benchmark that and they were so good at teaching against that. They were, but I just thought that I could get around that system, that truth of going, yeah, like we're all a work in progress, sure, but like I can't wait to the point where I can be sent back on my way again.
Yes. Yes. No, that very much summarized my second year.
So, 2 years. So you've come out the other end with a diploma, and you and I have become really good friends at that point. I remember that April, the second year, I went down to Melbourne with you for the April holidays. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. So what happened after 2 years? Where'd you go from there?
Yeah, so I think after the 2 years, I had received a lot of great teaching. I'd received a lot of healing, but one thing that was, I look back at it now and I was like, wow, that's really quite concerning. Is I was quite prideful, like, and very idealistic.
Okay.
I was like, I've had all this teaching. I'm not going to make the mistakes in life that all these other turkeys, all these other people in life make. Like, I'm better than this. I'm better than them. There was a level of condescension that in my mannerisms. And so I'd like, cool, I've done these 2 years of healing in a healing ministry, in a discipleship ministry. I was like, right now, all I need is to do some training in evangelism, and I'm going to be like the perfect Christian. So I found this course through a friend down in Melbourne, and I, looked evangelistic, and I was like, awesome, let's do this. And so my twin brother also signed up as well, so we got to do that year together, and that was really, really incredible. And when we went down there, it was completely different to what I expected.
Okay.
I think we're at LL. It was there was a level of gentleness to it. This year was a little bit more militant, like not in a bad way, but it was just very, very. There was a level of strictness to it.
Yeah. Okay. Can you give us some examples of like what the program included that made it so much more, militant, as you described?
Yeah. So I think I, like, even upon the application, they studied a diploma of ministry, which I'd already done. So I was like, great, I'll do a different one. They're like, oh, no, like, if you're going to do this course, continue on in a bachelor. And I'm like, no. And they're like, well,
because a bachelor isn't just one more year of study, isn't it?
It's multiple years, right? And I'd never intended to study Christian ministry. And so, like when it was like, no, like if you're going to do this year, we want you to do the bachelor. I was like, okay. But then it was very much like you show up to the place on time. And if you don't show up on time, well, there'll be consequences for that. Like, which in one sense, really good. But I think having been 2 years at LL Ministries, there was this real, I could see the beauty in the mercy and just the gentleness. And so I was seeing a completely different side of things. I found that probably a little bit shocking. Another thing which was interesting is I lived that year with a young family. There was like this 3-year-old and this 1-year-old. And like, I'd heard all this talk at LL of, like being the best father, being the best dad, being the best parent. And I'm like, oh, I've got all the teaching, I'm going to be perfect. And then I jump into this place and I have no boundaries. Like these kids are just running all over me. Like I can't say no to them. I can't in one sense it was humiliating. I was like, I've done 2 years of discipleship and here I am in a family context and I'm pathetic. In fact, I'm worse than pathetic. And I think also too, because I'd done 2 years at another discipleship center and I'd, received a lot of healing and freedom from that. Everything that this course did differently, I was ready to, with my high ideals, go, what do you guys do? Why are you doing that for? Like, that's wrong. And so it was a very interesting, jarring year.
I suppose it was, sounds like you were doing the same thing as you were with your brother, that whole comparison game of what did these guys do? Do these guys do it better or do they do it differently?
Oh, without a doubt. I lived and breathed comparison. Yeah. And so, it was a very interesting year. It was not what I thought it would be, but I'd said yes to it, so I stuck it out. And
did you ever feel like you wanted to quit?
Multiple times. It was really good. This also maybe begins a bit of the thread. I began to surround myself with mentors. And so I had 2 very, very wonderful mentors in that year that were just very, very helpful in speaking truth to me. So like one mentor, I'd be going, oh, this is hard. This is all of this. And talking about all the things I could be doing. And they'd just remind me, well, did God say to do this? Yeah. I'm like, yeah. Like, then why are you doubting that? I'm like, I'm trying to weasel my way out. And they're like, don't do that. And so that was really, really, really good. And so I think in this year, in one sense, what was quite frustrating is I'd done the 2 years of discipleship training. I thought, I'm like, this 3rd year is going to set me up and I'm going to be perfect. And it was so hard. And I think what was really hard as well, and I think this is quite a lot to the lack of my maturity in that time, and particularly my idealism in study, because I was doing study with an online university. I'd be studying and they'd be teaching one thing, and then I'd hear a sermon on the Sunday which I perceived was teaching the opposite. And I don't think I navigated it very well, but it was just this real interesting tension of I'd be learning this, in study, you need to ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life, the slow, steady. But then in some of the teaching I'd hear in the course, it's like, it's really about just accelerating, really about like, pedal to the metal, stepping up with your gifting. And I was just, there's just this real tension with me about that. And so it was I think, if I look back on it, it was a very beneficial year, but at the time it just felt terrible. And I think the year it culminated very interestingly. There was this girl that was back in Sydney that I was, interested in pursuing, and I ended up trying to pursue her long distance towards the back end of the year. Yeah. And I had in my mind still that I was the bee's knees, that I was, going to do everything perfectly. Mm-hmm. I'd received all this healing. I had to do it perfectly. And this relationship crashed and burned. I looked at my life and I was like, I've said, hey, I'm awesome. I'm all good. And I've just seen I can barely navigate boundaries and health in a family context with the family I'm living at.
Yeah.
I can barely navigate when people have differences of beliefs or opinions in this context. Relationship, I can barely keep things together. It was very much like I'd done 3 years of discipleship training, and it felt like my life was still a wreck. And maybe to just share a moment of that, I remember I was down at this church when we were having a night of prayer and worship, and everyone's worshiping, and I'm just at the back crying, like just tears. And like my life's still a mess. Like it doesn't matter how much I try to pretty myself up. Like I can't run away from myself. And so I remember just like crying. My brother's next to me. It was really, really nice. He just had his hand on my shoulder. And I just like, it almost, to use imagery, it felt like I was just sinking down to the bottom of this like rock. And as I was on this rock, I just suddenly felt Jesus' presence next to me. And Jesus just looked at me and I looked at him. I just burst into tears afresh.
Yeah.
And then I remember he ended up placing his hand around my shoulder, and he looked me in the eye and he said, Alec, do you know when I died, I descended into the depths of your brokenness. Wow. And like, I felt so broken in that moment. Like I was a broken man. And he looked at me and was like, when I died, I descended. And it felt like he was sitting with me in my brokenness. Yeah. And it was just this, it's very cathartic. Like I just was able to release. And then after, I don't know, it was probably only 5 or 10 minutes of just crying with him there. And I had like no tears left. I like turned to look at him and he looked at me and had this, just like this glint in his eye. It's like this glimmer of hope. And he said, guess what, Alec? And I'm like, yes. He said, like, Alec, I brought everything back to life. And then he just offered this very gentle invitation. It was like, Alec, do you want me to bring you back to life? And like, again, that was a very line in the sand moment for me. And I was like, yes, I feel like very much those 3 years had been me just striving and like having all these epic or incredible God encounters, then going, okay, how can I control this? Yeah. And very much the culmination of 3 years of intensive discipleship training ends me feeling like I've hit rock bottom, which I later realized wasn't rock bottom, but you know, hitting rock bottom.
There was another rock bottom to come.
Mate, always. Yeah, just hitting this rock bottom and Jesus going, these are the places I want to meet you, Alec. Where you get to the end of your rope when you have nothing left and you realize that you need another kind of life.
Yeah.
Like when you realize that your strength does not sustain you. And so maybe to sort of wrap up those 3 years, it ended in this incredible, humbling, beautiful moment. But if I'd told you from the beginning of that discipleship journey, you know, when my parents pulled me out of school, and if you'd have told me that 3 years would have ended in me just bursting into tears, I'd be like, that's pathetic. But it was exactly what I needed.
Yeah. Wow. So you finished 3 years, 2 years at LL Ministries, and then 1 year at Southern Lights. What's it called? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this then rolls into COVID, doesn't it?
Yes. Went into 2020.
Yeah. So where did you spend those COVID years?
Yeah, so there's a chapter in The Hobbit called Out of the Frying Pan into the Fire. I feel like it's a great way to set this up. I decided to go back home.
Yep.
Down just east of Melbourne to live with my parents. I decided to continue studying the Bachelor of Ministry part-time, which was so good. I absolutely loved that. But so I was living with my parents and my sister, and again, I thought, you know, I've done 3 years. Yeah, I've hit rock bottom, but I've got to be pretty good. And it was just, I'm going to use the word hilarious for lack of a better term. Just the struggling to help my parents do the dishes, like just not being a very helpful person in the house. And I'm like, I've done all this discipleship and I'm still struggling to just be a functionally good human being in my parents' house. Like, this is crazy. It was also this year that I worked as a tester and tagger. So that's just, you know, checking, you know, electrical equipment and cables, just making sure they're compliant legally for insurance and all of that. I did that. I'm a very extroverted person, and although I was earning a lot of money, it was soul killing. And so I'm doing that job. My soul is withering. I'm at home just feeling like frustrated. I wanted to be frustrated at my parents, but I'm more just frustrated at myself because I'm like, I should be better than this.
Yeah. Because what I found, and tell me if this was
Yeah,
your
yeah.
experience, is that every time I went home, something about going back to the community that you're so familiar with, even going back to the house that you're familiar with, suddenly all this progress that you feel you've made spiritually seems to just dissolve when you're with your people that you grew up with. And you just slide straight back into old patterns of behaving in the way that you relate to them, in the way that they relate to you. It kind of brings out that old self that you feel like maybe you had taken a few more steps away from than you perhaps have. Yeah, what was it like to live under your parents' roof again? Because it's now been 3 years since you've done that.
Well, I think maybe to maybe draw on that concept a little bit. There's a Scottish author by the name of George MacDonald back in the 19th century, and he's a bit of a passive mentor of mine, and he has this quote where he says, "We are poor creatures, willed upon, not willing." And to maybe expand upon that a little bit more, in one of his novels, there's this a princess that she's a bit self-centered. She's not fun to be around. She thinks she's the only somebody in the world. And this God figure very much comes into her life and meets her and loves her. And it's this profound, the book's called The Wise Woman, but it's this profound image at the lengths God will go to love us. And there's multiple points in the book where you're like, oh, that doesn't look like love. But to draw on the concept, there's this moment where the God figure gets this girl, this princess, to clean the house. And this God figure, who's a woman, it says, until you've cleaned the house, you won't get food. And so the woman goes away and the food will magically appear when the place is clean. And the princess, of course, doesn't clean the house and then gets really hungry and kind of miserable. And then out of sheer hunger, cleans the house. Yeah. And then finally the house is clean, the food comes. She's like, oh, this is amazing. Like, eats the food. But I guess the concept that I want to draw from that is the princess thought she was so good eating the food because she'd cleaned, completely forgetting that the only reason she'd cleaned was out of sheer hunger. And I realized a lot of the change that I thought had happened in me had only happened around me. It had only been that I was in a community context that was different from my family and maybe healthier in other areas. So there was a level of compassion that was different from that growing up in my family. And so and also I would say there was a level of emotional maturity, at least emotional maturity in being able to navigate the areas in my heart that I didn't know how to navigate, that all these leaders and mentors were coming into my life and very much helping me. And I attributed that growth to me.
Right.
I was like, man, I must be so good. I must be amazing. And then, of course, going home and realizing that a lot of the change was actually people outside my life coming to help me. And now that they weren't there, I realized that the change hadn't necessarily gotten all the way here, at least parts.
Yeah.
But I thought all of it was due to my goodness, my character, my growth. And so I think, going back to the parents, it was an experience in seeing that perhaps I hadn't grown as much as I thought. And maybe a familiar theme, which is coming up more and more in my life these days, is like, it was very humbling, very humiliating, very, tough pill to swallow.
Wow. So you spent all of 2020 with your parents?
Yep. All of 2020 with the parents. Yep. Continued studying.
What was that like? Was that, I suppose, you had been studying for 3 years, and that third year was with this same college, Australian College of Ministry. Did it feel like at least some of what you were experiencing in those other years was carrying over, being able to study through ACOM?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of change. Like I was very much focusing on the areas of my life that kind of sucked and was sort of painful, but it was really interesting because my parents were noticing a change in me that I couldn't really see when I would chat with we had some like formation groups, some groups of people that would journey with in our year. They were all like just going, wow, the journey you're on, Alec, is profound and good. And I'm like, it just feels terrible. They're like, no, it's great. I'm like, what? But I think one thing which was really interesting about study, 2020, back end of 2019, which was when I did that, I really started to develop a deep love for books. And so one thing which was really consoling for me was just this tension, this wrestle like that I had, and particularly too that I'd done 3 years of discipleship, and I'm in one sense becoming more and more aware of just how inadequate I am. And then I'm hearing, in some church services, all that's like, God loves you. I'm like, yeah, I feel God's love, but then I feel more aware of my inadequacy. Like it's this really weird, like, I feel like the more I press into this Christian thing, I should be feeling better, but I feel worse. Like it was this really odd feeling. And so I really started to develop a friendship with authors, like passively at least. So 3 authors particularly in this time that I really started to draw from was C.S. Lewis, particularly in the lockdown. I really developed a love for a guy by the name of Dallas Willard. He's an American philosopher, theologian, and also George MacDonald. So I think a real helpful part of that lockdown, I had so much time and I've filled a lot of it with reading. And I think in reading, to me, it unlocked Christianity through the ages for me. Like there's a term that I use called following the footnotes. And so it was through that year that I'd read a chapter and I'd be like, oh, this is such a good chapter. And so I'd go to the footnotes and I'd go, wow, who were they drawing from? And I'd read them. And it'd just be this beautiful, reading that book. And then you'd see footnotes for that. You're like, oh my goodness, I love that chapter. What's the footnote? And it very much opened me up, not just to the 21st century. Yeah. Through C.S. Lewis, I got to meet William Law. Through Lewis as well, I got to meet St. Augustine. And it was just this beautiful, all of these authors introduced me to other authors. And I think what was really helpful is all of that strengthened my faith, because across the ages, I saw all these people who had genuinely encountered God and loved him with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so as much as I was struggling in this moment, particularly, let's say, C.S. Lewis or Augustine, like all of these guys, getting to hear the first part of their journey, or I read the beginning of St. Francis's life, St. Francis of Assisi, and just this tension, this like inadequacy, or this self-hatred, this, oh, what am I doing? Like, and I was like, that's me. That this is where I feel like I am. I feel like I'm crazy. I feel like a lot of the Christians around me are going, Alec, why you tying yourself up in a knot? And I'm like, well, like, it either says love God or don't, and I can't genuinely say that I love God. Like, I think this self-reflective introspection was leading me to, if I say I love God, I have to follow that through with action. And if I don't follow that through with action, therefore I don't love God. And if I look at my actions, it very much says I don't love God. I think it says I love myself more than God. But like, on one hand, feeling crazy, like like this is not the right conversation to be having. But on the other hand, this weird sweetness of going, but I see this all throughout Christian history. So yeah, that year in COVID really introduced me to the Christian faith across the ages.
It's our heritage, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So you've developed this love for books, and especially, I suppose, the writings of these Christian giants, which, I mean, quite frankly, a lot of Christians haven't even heard of. Yeah, where did you go from there? Because you came back up to LL Ministries to continue the degree that you were studying.
Yep.
Did you feel like you were coming back after 2 years as a bit of a different person again, or what was it like to reintegrate back into LL after having gone for 2 years?
Yeah, so I think that year at home, there was a lot of teaching at LL. Like, there's only so much you can take in as a 17, 18, 19-year-old. Yeah. And, you know, then having done 2 years away from LL, there was a lot of the teaching there that I was like, oh, yeah, I think it's a bit more applicable now. Like, I thought I understood it back then, but now as I'm growing, I'm seeing, I guess, maybe a need to relook at it. Yeah. And so I thought, why not continue studying my Bachelor of Ministry up at LL, which was still a possibility. And so ended up doing that, which was, again, really, really good. I think one tension that I have wrestled with, and it was only resolved a couple of years ago, was I also have a temptation to think the grass is greener on the other side. Yep. So if I'm in Sydney, I think Melbourne looks real great. If I'm in Melbourne, I think Sydney looks real good. And if I look back at it now, I realize it was this, I just didn't like being where I was with who I was. Like, if I could personify goodness in the future, then I didn't have to face my problems. I didn't have to face who I was. So anyway, that's a bit of a sidetrack there. But yeah, I ended up coming back to LL, and it was really nice, you know, continuing studying a Bachelor of Ministry. I got to study alongside you and another wonderful guy called Zach. And yeah, again, I never really intended to complete a Bachelor of Ministry, but the fruit of the Bachelor of Ministry is that a lot of the time it got me to focus on things that I normally would have avoided. Like, I very much was just like, it's all about passion. It's all about love. It's all about just vibing. It's all about getting into the presence and moment with God. But these units were like on Christology, or like why the doctrine of the Trinity is important. Like, who is the Trinity? Like, what is Christian history? And it was actually a lot through the units. Like, I met Dallas Willard through them. I really cultivated a love for reading by going through that. And I think it also really helped show me that faith is not blind. Like,
so unpack that a little.
Yeah, so faith is grounded experience in reality. Like for me, faith in God seemed like this. For me, faith was almost a feeling. Like, it was this kind of, what incantation or what spooky thing do I do to try to like make me good with God? Yeah. But as I went through the Bachelor of Ministry, particularly the more academic and theological units, I started to look less at myself, less at my feelings, and more just at God and Jesus. Yeah. And as I looked particularly at Jesus, my faith strengthened. Like, as I looked at Jesus, as I read him through the Gospels, as I began to understand a bit more what he did and the weight of it, as I read different authors as they shared their experience of that, I started to have this settled conviction that Jesus was true. Jesus was who he said he was. And I think that was quite profound. Jesus became less of a, less of a, you just use his blood to wash yourself off, or like, stick on his name at the end of a prayer to give it a little more power kind of thing. Like, instead of him being the thing you use to make your life better, he became a person who was also God. And what was crazy about that is God who is personal, a God who is intimately involved. And that's very much the incarnational thinking, like God becoming flesh, him coming to dwell among us, him coming to be with us, and just realizing the power of that. Jesus was not a God that did nothing.
So you finished the degree. Did you feel, because at a few points in your journey, you say like you felt like you'd arrived, or that you had kind of reached a point where you could say, this is instilled in me and it's forever there, sort of thing. But did you feel that sort of sense having completed a bachelor's degree in ministry, or were things starting to change? It was an achievement, and so in some sense there was something to be quite proud of. But how did it feel finishing that degree?
Yeah, so I think maybe to just 2021, which is continuing to study the bachelor up at LL. I having initially come to LL, I was like, oh, this is great, this is awesome. Yeah. But again, I brought little old me with me, and just this real sense of inadequacy still. And I remember there was a Zoom call I had in ACOM, and there was a guest speaker by the name of Trevor Hudson, and he's a South African Methodist minister, and there was a Q&A time, and I asked him a question, and I said, like, Trevor, like, I really want to be in ministry, but I feel so inadequate. Like, what do I do? And he just said to me, like, Alec, perhaps your inadequacy is a gift. Perhaps you need to embrace your inadequacy, because your inadequacy will always let you know that you can't do it without God. It's like your inadequacy is an invitation to God. And that just like completely reframed it for me. But I think really introduced to me another thread that God had been knocking at the door of my heart for a while on. And so that was around 2021, 2022. I've forgotten which year, but there was this sense of, like, I think, progressively becoming more and more miserable because time kept going on. I kept knowing more about God, but I kept looking at my life and being, where's the fruit? And this is where reading George MacDonald very much came to the rescue for me. I've read this incredible novel called The Curate's Awakening, or Thomas Wingfold Curate, and it was about a minister who's been professing ministry, doing ministry, and he gets called out for being a fraud. And because he's honest, he's like, I don't actually think I believe what I'm teaching. Like, I know all the words, but I don't know him. And I think it really put words to the journey. I had all these moments with God, but I think as I reflected, and this is, again, looking back, reflection, nearly all that I had been doing with God was at its heart self-centered. I don't think a lot of it was malicious, but to be safe, I had to be at the center. And so if I look at the journey, I was the end and God was the means. Like, God was there to help me. For years, I didn't see a problem with that. God's powerful. I need help. This is great. But I think the misery that I was feeling was that I was living in a story that was far too small Like, I was living a story where it all had to revolve around me. Yeah. And that really started to grate. And so it sort of came to this point through reading Thomas Wingfold Curate, where I just sort of realized, like, I think I need to be honest. Like, and then maybe to throw in one other thread in the story, I also jumped into the world of dating again. This was in 2023. So having finished the Bachelor of Ministry, I'm like, right, like, we'll give it a go. And I date, and I managed to completely stuff it up yet again. And it, like, that wrecked me.
Just to give a little bit more kind of detail, what was it in you that that you felt was like inadequate to sustain a relationship with someone, a romantic relationship? Like, what did you see in yourself that you would say that would have been hard to be in a relationship with?
I think the relationship gave me tangible evidence that I still wasn't honest. Okay. Like, I jumped into the relationship going, I'm doing this for you. Right. But if I looked at my actions, like, it became, I think, quickly apparent that I don't think she necessarily wanted to be in the relationship, but I wasn't willing to see that. Although if I looked, I could see it. And there was a level of, I kept saying the relationship was to bless her. But if I look at my actions spoke pretty clearly otherwise, that it wasn't about her at all. It was about me. And when the breakup happened, I was wrecked. But I also felt this, like, invitation from God to face myself, to look at myself squarely in the eye. And when I looked at myself squarely in the eye, I hated myself, because, like, I'm not sure if this is going to make sense. I hated myself because I loved myself. Like, it was this, again, reading The Wise Woman from George MacDonald was very helpful in this moment of, I looked back at my life and I was like, nearly everything I'm doing is for me. When I go play a board game, I'm not playing it for other people. I'm playing it for me. When I watch a movie, I'm not watching a movie for other people. I'm watching it for me. When I relate to my family, I'm relating them not because it's primarily for them, but for me. When I talk to God, I'm not talking to God for God's sake, but for me. And this profound, like, uncomfortable willingness to be honest and going, that's kind of miserable. like, because I didn't love the girl in the relationship. I said I did, but my actions spoke otherwise. It just really invited a season of introspection to go, I'd done 6 years of intensive discipleship, and I was still one of the most self-centered people I knew. And that, I think, was a very, 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 very tough pill to swallow. Yeah.
So where do you go from there? When something like that is revealed to you, or you see it in yourself, I mean, that would be enough to send a lot of people down a pretty deep spiral of either self-pity or self-rejection, or some kind of sense that maybe there is just no hope of transformation. Like, when you look at having done 6 years of discipleship where you've had other people pouring into you, you've learnt to relate to God on a closer level than you've ever done. It might almost be tempting to look at that and go, well, if I can't do it after 6 years, if I can't get out of this selfish pursuit, maybe salvation doesn't mean change in the here and now. Like, it could be tempting to go down that path. Were you starting to question, like, is genuine transformation a myth? Or was there still this hope of going, well, maybe this is just, change, or or freedom is around the corner, God's just still leading me. Like, where was your heart in terms of the hope of something different, of a breakthrough in that?
Yeah. I think just in the words of Peter in the Gospel of John, where, Jesus says, are you going to abandon me? And Peter says, where else we go, God? Like, you've got the words of eternal life. I think as I sort of came to face that, there was a few tensions going on here. Like, on one hand, there were a lot of people that were like, Alec, like, Jesus loves you. And like, it was interesting because that almost added to the misery. It was this, I know he loves me and look what I'm doing. I'm spitting in his face. He's like, Alec, don't be too hard on yourself. I'm like, I don't think I'm being hard enough. Like this is like, so there was, on one hand, there was a lot of advice people were giving me that really wasn't actually helpful.
Yeah.
Because it still left a lot of room for self-centeredness, which was the thing that I was struggling with. It was like, they're like, yes, Alec, Jesus loves you. I'm like, yes, and I'm using and squandering his love on myself. like I'm using his love in like a self-indulgent brat. I'm hoarding it. And like, it's now becoming my detriment. And so there was that on one thing, but on the other hand, what really helped was a lot of the books that I'd read. There was like, I'd been reading books from the Catholic sphere. I'd been reading books from the Reformation. I'd been reading books just in recent times, but across all of them, there was this very interesting experience of them getting to the end of their rope and choosing Christ. And yes, I'd been baptized in 2018. And I said, God, I'm not going to sit on the fence any longer. I choose you. But I feel like God was really honoring me now in leading me to the place where I could make a deeper choice for him. And a lot of the choices I've been making to that point was like, God, I'll follow you, but as long as it feels good. Yeah. God, I'll follow you as long as it's on my terms. Like, God, I'll follow you as long as I get to do what I want.
Yeah.
Which is not really surrender at all. It's just like, and so I think what really, helped me stay in that space was, one, I'd surrounded myself with a few mentors that I really admired their life.
Yeah.
And they really helped me. So there was that mentor space. Two, I just had a bit of a band of brothers, some guys around me that we just got to have real talk, just about God, about life. We'd read the Gospels together. And it was just this, just knowing that there were other guys my age hungering and thirsting. That was really helpful. But then also too, really those books was just, every time I'd sort of lull myself into going, oh, Alec, you're following just some false random thing. The very next day I'd read a book and the chapter would be exactly like, that's it. Like, that tension. Like, I can't honestly say I'm living a godly life. I can't, like, there's this chapter in this biography of St. Francis written by this lady called Elizabeth Googe, and she titles this chapter, My God, My All. And it's this moment where St. Francis is like, God, it's all on the altar. I give you everything. And then C.S. Lewis talked about it in his, like, we live our life like a taxpayer. We want to give God a little bit of our life and then wonder if we have enough after we've given stuff to God to live on. And it's like, that doesn't work. God doesn't want part of our time or all of our time. He wants us. And when we give ourselves fully to him, like, this is very much when it gets into the language of John chapter 3, where Jesus is like, this is a life from above. Like, another kind of life is available. Yeah. And like, as long as you live in your self-centered, trying to figure it out all in your own strength, as long as you try to live self-sufficient, self-protected, you cannot receive or imagine the kingdom of God. Wow. Like if you try to save your life, if you try to save it, keep it all together, you're going to lose it. But if you lose your life, if you lay it all down, if you say, my God, my all, there's no part of my life which I am going to withhold from you, you'll find your life. And that was the tension. I'm like, God, I want you, but I want to stay in control.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that.
Yeah, man, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Where do you find yourself today? When you look at like your, I guess the base state, where your heart sits in terms of how you feel God sees you, how you see God, how you relate to others, having gone on this journey of crucifying the self that is only centered on itself. Where would you say you are at the moment?
Over the span of the past 2 years, God, by his grace, has been leading me on a journey of learning that he is the center. And been leading me on a journey of realizing there is no part of myself, no matter how small, that I can try to smuggle in, like self-centeredness. There's no little, I think Lewis says it in The Great Divorce, there's no souvenir from hell that I can smuggle in. But if I fully lay down my life and open it up to the beautiful, wonderful presence of God, who knows what'll happen? And so it's this really, really incredible space where I realize, wow, every time I try to be the center, that is actually, for lack of a better term, that's the proddings of hell. Yeah. Think of Lucifer. What did he do? He said, God, I want a world where I'm the center. And I was like, that doesn't work. I am the center. And Lucifer's like, well, no, I want to be. And the only place where he could be that is hell. And realizing, hang on, I'm an unceasing spiritual being. I'm never going to stop existing. And if I'm never going to stop existing, well, I really better think what eternity might be like. And there's one definition for eternity, which is that they shall know God. And realizing, hang on, eternity is relational. Eternity is open to another. And realizing I wasn't created to be the center, to be self-sufficient. I was created by a loving, incredible, beautiful, awesome God. And it is my privilege to be what he has made me. Wow. Which is not the center. And so I think that's just been really, really helpful framework now to live life. And this is probably where I find myself right now, because for most of my life, I've tried to raise myself up. I've tried to find areas where I am going to look good, where I'm going to be able to control, where I'm going to be able to be the center. And I think the language has now changed to, what is one area in my life that I most want to avoid because I feel most pathetic at? Yeah. Let's look at that with my eyes wide open and see what the grace of God does. Like Paul says, he'll boast in his weakness. And I'm realizing just this, again, Dallas Willard really helped me with some definitions. What a great definition of grace that he uses is, grace is God acting in our lives to help us do what we cannot do in our own strength. And just realizing my life was never made to be self-sufficient. I was never created to do it on my own. I was actually created to be in interactive relationship with God, but not only interactive, but participating with him. My life is meant to be an outpost and an extension of his kingdom here on earth. May your kingdom come, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And going, wow, what are the areas in my life that will most reveal your grace? And right now, to be honest, a lot of my weaknesses, I think, are where it most reveals his grace, because I'm I can't do it on my own strength there. Like for one example, cleaning my room, I sucked at cleaning my room. Like I just called myself a disorganized person. I'm like, well, you know what? Thank God my room can now be a vessel for God's grace. Yeah, I'm going to need copious amounts of grace to be able to order my room so it's an expression of my heart of worship towards God. And guess what? Now I've got a clean room by the grace of God.
Yeah.
Like,
and it stays that way.
right? It's a clean room as an act of worship to say, I love you, God. And it is only by you that I keep this clean. It is only through you. Each action is an expression of worship. And so I think, that's very much been the past 2 years, trying to condense a lot into a little. And I guess looking forward, it is just absolutely this beautiful adventure of this deep contentedness of I am who I am. Like, God can only meet me where I am, and where I am is filled with inadequacies and tender areas and all of that. But like, there's almost this little bit of an excitement, because it's like, it doesn't matter how broken I am. God's grace, like it says in John 1, like grace and truth came through Jesus. And going like, wow, I have so many areas in my life that I can't do it on my own. And I come to realize my whole life I can't do on my own. All the areas I thought I could do it on my own, it was pathetic. I was living in a story far too small, and going, wow, my life is like an open, if I will let it, it is an open, almost vessel for God's grace to pour out. And I think maybe to just end this train of thought, there's that beautiful line in Matthew that says, like, let your light shine so that others may see your good works and give glory to the Father who is in heaven. And there's this beautiful sense of, wow, if I just let God meet me in all of these areas, that can in time become an area of light, which I will fully well know it is not my doing, so that people can see it and give glory to Father in heaven. So I think that's maybe the language, the cartography that I'm, I guess, navigating at the moment.
Beautiful. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I feel like as I'm listening to your story, you circle around and you kind of put grace at the center of what you have navigated with God. I really feel like it deepens the message of salvation, the gospel message, because things like grace and love and the Father's heart, all these things, I guess, as I was saying earlier on, they are concepts that we're familiar with in Christianity, but they're not necessarily explored to such depths and applied directly to us. It's always very easy to see that God's grace would be fitting to save this person in that situation, or to rescue the very broken or the very wicked. But to see grace at the center of your story, even having grown up in a Christian home, I think it really just deepens the power of the gospel. And I love it. So thank you for sharing.
No worries. It has been a pleasure getting to be on this podcast with you, Levi.